This video is for the Parent Teacher YouTube channel. This is Teach Your Child to Read, Where to Begin. And this is part one of a two-part series. Before I begin, if you're familiar with my YouTube channel, you will know that I'm a big believer in setting children on their literacy journey early. So today we're going to talk about some simple things you can do to set your child on a path to success. We're going to go over some things that you can do at different ages and stages along the way. As with every video that I make, I want to remind you, everyone is an individual, so please know that every child develops in their own way and at their own rate. If your child is struggling with a certain skill, be patient, work with your child, and of course seek help if your concern persists. You can also leave comments below if you have questions or suggestions. Of course, there are probably things I've missed or things you've thought of that you could share with others. And the Parent Teacher channel is really meant to be a resource for parents and teachers to come together and improve the education of our children. So this series is going to talk about what you can do for early learners from birth to 6. Yes, we're going to talk about little ones today too. And no, I don't expect infants to be reading, but a lot of research out there is suggesting that what children learn at home before they begin formal school plays a big part in their later success, especially that first year. It's so important. So my goal is to really affirm what you're already doing, to strengthen your resolve to keep at it, and maybe share some new suggestions or ideas along the way. Because what you do makes a big difference for your children. So we're going to break this down into two groups, birth to 2 years old and 3 years old to 6 years old. I'm not going to break it down any more than that because I don't want to focus on what age your child is at, but rather what they can do and what they can learn to do next. Also, kids are so varied in their abilities and preferences that I find age is not always a good indicator of what they can do. So this first one, this part one of the series, will focus on birth to 2 years old, and that will be focusing on setting the stage for reading success. Part two will focus on 3-year-old to 6-year-old, and that will be phonemic awareness and encouraging basic phonics. Of course, some children will need more time with the beginning activities. Some will be ready to advance sooner. These are very loose ages. The later activities in that 3 years old to 6 years old range, they're often worked on during pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade. It's in the curriculum generally for those grade levels. But it can be worked on beyond that, especially if your child receives some kind of reading intervention instruction. I describe learning to read as a journey, and everyone needs to be able to travel at their own rate. So there's no shame if your child needs to work longer on phonemic awareness or phonics skills. And I'll tell you a secret. I didn't develop strong phonemic awareness until I was an adult. I still don't know if I'd even call it all that strong. But my point is, if they're struggling in this area, it's not the end of the world. But you may want to discuss these concerns with their teacher. So if you've got a child that's in, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and they're struggling with reading, these might be some things you could bring up. But so for part one, I said we're going to focus on birth to 2 years old, setting the stage for reading success. So that's what this video will focus on. We're going to focus on 2 areas, building language skills, which spoken language is the beginning of your child's literacy journey. So understanding spoken language includes facial expressions, understanding tone of voice, intonation. That's just the basis of good communication skills. So reading is really a way of receiving a message. So your child needs good language skills to begin with. So we're going to talk about how to build language skills. And the second one is encourage a desire to read, a love of reading, as we say. It's very beneficial when children begin the process of learning to read because mastering the art of reading can be a very long and difficult journey. Not for all, but for many. So if your child enjoys reading, if they see a benefit to reading, they'll have more motivation to keep trying to learn, even if it gets hard. So the first one, building language skills. The first one is talk to your child. Sounds simple, right? But the busyness of our lives can get in the way of this sometimes, especially if we work outside the home. If we've returned to work, it can be hard to fit it in. So some great ways to talk with your child to fit into your daily routine could be just describing what you see around you while you're driving, if you're shopping together, running errands, if you're at the park, waiting for an appointment. Those are all great times to interact and talk with your child. It's best if you can be face-to-face with your child so they can see your mouth and your face, all your expression. I know riding in a car, they can't really see that, but that's okay. Facial expressions really can help, and gestures. So pointing to things, maybe making motions to explain action words. Those can be helpful for your child to make meaning of what they're seeing and what they're hearing. With young infants, you can talk to them about what they have their eyes focused on. So maybe a button on your shirt or something on the blanket. Now, personally, I have always tried to speak in full yet complete simple sentences. For instance, I might ask, oh, do you like that button? Or do you like that round button? Instead of just saying button. So I don't want to focus on just naming that object, but giving context and or a description. With a young infant, you may keep it simple. Do you see that button? But as they grow, push for richer descriptions. Do you see that big, round, red button? Give them time to respond, even if it is just a smile and a giggle or a coo. This teaches them to engage in a back and forth conversation. The next one is play with your child. So with very young children, playing will look different than with older children. So for infants, laying down with your child for tummy time, talking with her about what she sees, as well as playing peekaboo or tickling her tummy and toes, those are all great things for an infant. Older children will be able to play with toys. They might even be able to engage in a little bit of imaginative play. Playing with toy animals and puppets provide opportunities to make animal noises and voices. Toy people, figures, dolls, those offer the chance to act out stories where spoken language can tell a story. And some children like to play dress up. That can be fun to role play and interact that way. Active play is good for teaching about different ways to move your body by running, jumping, climbing, swinging, sliding. It can also teach position words, on, under. Playing together just builds their ability to use language. And if possible, arrange for your child to play with other children, even if they're slightly older or younger. They can learn a lot from that kind of communication as well. The next one is make animal noises, sounds, and encourage them to copy you. So with children who may be reluctant to speak, this can be a fun way to encourage vocalization, and it can kind of reduce some anxiety they may have about speaking. Make different voices for characters in books and stories. This is just a fun way, and it makes reading fun, and it will encourage them to use their voice as well, hopefully. Sing songs and rhymes with your child. This is great for developing their ear for music and for phonemic awareness later on down the road. Don't worry if you aren't a great singer. The internet can help you. Okay, so use your favorite radio app out there to look for children-appropriate music. Encourage your child to sing or chant along. Rhymes or songs with motions are excellent. My kids personally loved Jack Hartman, and so do I. You can check out his YouTube channel. He's got a ton of fun songs, some that are just for fun, also some that teach basic concepts, colors, shapes. I didn't find them to be annoying as some children's songs are. There's a variety of different genres of music. But again, fun and engaging, get your toddlers up and moving. Next one is ask your child questions and encourage them to answer with words, not just gestures or grunts, if they're talking. So this one is a little tricky. As I have said before, I encourage asking your child questions early on, even before he or she can answer. This just shows your child that she is important and that her opinions and ideas are valued. Young infants won't be able to respond, but they will begin to engage with you, maybe by turning towards people, smiling, laughing, reaching, pointing, hopefully eventually speaking. And there's no great need to rush speaking. Children will speak when they are ready. And remember, just because a child doesn't speak doesn't mean that he or she doesn't understand. And there are lots of nonverbal ways to check for understanding. So you can ask the child to point to something, or to get you something, to bring you something, or to take something somewhere. Also, nodding and shaking the head are great ways to see if there's some understanding. And you can even teach new vocabulary words without your child needing to be verbal. However, I do recommend that if your child is able to speak, please encourage it. This is an area that I'm not as strong as my husband. My husband is way better at this than me. I think he just really hates the kids whining, so he takes the time to make them ask correctly for things. Whereas I feel really busy and rushed, so if my daughter tips her water cup over in size, I know, oh, her water cup's empty. I'll probably just fill it without even making her ask. But my husband's really good, so I'm going to use him as an example. So when our daughter was very small, just learning to walk between 1 and 2, and developing her language skills at the same time. Instead of just allowing my daughter to reach up both arms like I would just let her reach up her arms and I'd pick her up. My husband wouldn't allow that. He would say, "What do you want?" And he'd wait for her to say "up." He'd coach on it in the beginning, or "up, please." Once we knew, like I said, once she'd been coached and we knew she could say it. Eventually, he wouldn't even just accept "up, please," when he knew that she was capable of saying, "I want to be picked up," or "Can you pick me up, please?" Again, he'd coached her on that. So the point is to keep kind of pushing that envelope, kind of pushing your child and expecting a little more. Sometimes it's easier for some of us, and sometimes it's harder for some of us. If you have nonverbal children, don't despair. Sign language can be very helpful. So if you can look up baby sign, do some simple sign. We started out with our kids at probably about, I think they were about 6 months old. We used it a lot during meal times for more or all done. I think we taught the signs for the different emotions as well. So it's just another way that they can communicate in a nonverbal way, but it can show them the value of communicating. So that's another thing to do. The point is just keep your child communicating. If you're concerned, like I've said before, contact your pediatrician, your primary care provider. If your child is in some sort of child care facility, daycare, you could make contact with them and get their opinion on it. But lots of children don't start talking till later and have no problem, but it can be. So there's no harm in asking another opinion. My last one is don't use only simple language, and I encourage you to explain the meanings of new words. So this one also depends on what your child is capable of. So you have to be in tune with your child. With young infants, it's fine to stick to simple language, but don't stay in that zone for too long. So once your child demonstrates an understanding of the word big, maybe by choosing the big teddy bear versus the small one when you asked for it, or maybe they use the word big when pointing or describing something that is big, you might choose to start describing big items as large. Or for a very large item, maybe you're using the word huge. So just kind of pushing that envelope. I even would use those words interchangeably or at the same time. So once I kind of felt like my son had an understanding of big, I might say, "Look at that big truck. Look at that big semi-truck. It's so large. Look, it's a big, large truck." So kind of using it in conjunction, and then maybe the next time I'm just using large, going back and forth, just introducing a lot of vocabulary words. And kids are really sponges, and they soak that stuff up. But by introducing that strong vocabulary early on, you're just setting your child up for success. Okay, so the second thing that I want you to think about when you're trying to help your child that's an infant to 2 years old, when you're setting that stage for reading success, the other area to focus on is encouraging a desire to read. So the first one seems pretty obvious. Read to your child every day if you can. If you have a consistent schedule, this is easier to follow, but you can also think about child care providers. They might be able to help you out with this one. So maybe you work a 12-hour shift 3 days a week. and your child's in childcare for part of that, and with maybe a relative for the other part. Maybe someone is doing some lap time there, doing some reading. And if not, if you really only get 4 days in, it's better than nothing. We were able to start a more consistent routine with our family. We did nightly reading at bedtime. It fit our schedule when our infants became more regular in their sleep schedule. So about 4 to 6 months, kind of in that range, that's when we were able to kind of start setting that routine up. Let your child pick out what you are reading to them. Once your child is old enough, he can pick out what he wants you to read. So even if he's nonverbal, having him choose between, point or grab a couple books is appropriate. Now, even if he chooses the same book every night, you need to tough it out. You need to let them have a choice. It might just encourage you to hit the library and find something more interesting, but validate it. So I'm going to use another example here. My son would like the same book maybe every night for 2 months in a row. He's just that way, and it drives my husband crazy. But the way we got around it is we would say, let's read, let's pick 2 books tonight, or 3 books, or 4, how many ever. And he would get to pick some, and then the parent would get to pick some. So if you're really tired of hearing that same book every night for 2 months, just try to introduce some new ones that you think might be more interesting to both of you. Another way to have your child have some choice is to provide baby books, like board books, fabric books. There's some great indestructible books now. You can have those out at playtime, when they're on the rug, on the carpet, on the mat, maybe when you need to accomplish something for yourself. That's just a great way for them to self-select and interact with books. A word of caution, though, keep an eye on them with board books. My son once ate through the spine of a board book. He ate the cardboard, the glue, all of it, and left a big, huge hole during a 30-minute drive home at night when it was dark. He was fine, but the book was not. It had a huge hole. So I guess he was just hungry for that book. But look into some quality indestructible books, especially if you've got a teething little one who's putting everything in their mouth. Okay, the next one is ask your child questions about what you are reading to him or her. This may seem like something that's only for older children, but you can do it from an early age. Examples for young children may include asking them to point to characters in the pictures. It may be asking them to mimic animal sounds if they're starting to vocalize. It might be asking them to show how a character felt in the story. They can do this non-verbally by showing their facial expression to you. As children begin to talk more, you can shift your questions a little and move to open-ended questions. Some examples could be you, as the parent, pointing to a picture and asking, "Who is this?" or "What is this? What do you see on this page?" and letting them select different items to describe. Some good open-ended questions for kids with more verbal skills could be, well, what happened to, such and such character? Or what do you think is going to happen next? You can even let them look ahead in the book and make some predictions. You can ask, well, why did this happen? Why did such and such happen? And one of my favorites is, what is your favorite part of this book? Or what is your favorite picture? And they can explain that. And you can even ask them why, if they're ready for that. Encourage your child to join in, if possible, in that reading experience. This falls along with asking questions. This may be having your child finish like the last word in the sentence of a book that repeats, or one that she's heard many times, like chicka chicka boom boom. If you've read a book over and over a lot, they'll kind of know. And the last one is let your child read to you. This one can be done in a variety of ways. So for beginning speakers, you can have them tell you what is on each page of like simple board books that they're familiar with. So there's a lot of great board books that will have an image with a background, like a single object or item, and they can just name the item on the page. As your child develops and begins to speak in sentences and phrases, he may enjoy retelling a story he's heard many times out of a storybook. And he can just tell the story to you or with your help, kind of in his own words. And there's no need to read from the actual book, no need to read the actual words. This is actually called picture reading, and it should be recognized as the earliest form of reading that our kiddos do. So when kids do this, I would say they have an understanding of the purpose of reading and hopefully a desire to read. And they may be ready to begin the next steps in their reading journey. So I hope you've enjoyed this video for the Parent Teacher YouTube channel, Teach Your Child to Read, Where to Begin, Part 1. This focused on birth to 2 years old, setting the stage for reading success. If you feel like your child's ready to move on to some more challenging skills, check out Part 2. We'll be focusing on phonemic awareness and basic phonics with an ideal range of ages 3 years old to 6 years old. Also, if you've enjoyed this video or think it can benefit someone, please like and share. Also, you can subscribe to the channel, and that will keep you in touch with myself and with things going on here. You'll be able to be informed when there are new videos put out.